Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Police and emergency personnel. What's the most BS story someone has given when they were in a situation? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Got a disturbance call, and after we get there, we see one of the front windows of the house is open. Turns out a tweaker had let herself in. We get her out and calm down. She swore we were the FBI and were going to haul her off to those government Fs. And she proceeds to tell us that she actually owns a cleaning business, and she broke in to clean the house so she could drum up business from the homeowners. Too bad she had cleaned out their jewelry, etc. too. Navy Corpsman. Dude pissed hot on a drug test and swore that some woman drugged him at a club. Told us how he went out the night before the test, had a drink, and felt very woozy afterwards. He took it all the way. He filed a report saying that he may have been sexually assaulted and everything. Main problem was that he popped positive for weed. Secondary problem was that he was on overnight duty the night before he took this test. Had a guy in a Chinese takeaway get punched in the side of the face, come outside and identify the attacker to us. I put cuffs on the guy and give him the caution. He keeps explaining that he slipped on some sweet and sour sauce, which is usually sticky, and fell into the guy. Kept on telling us, look at the CCTV, look at the CCTV. We checked the CCTV anyway. Shows him and his friends throwing chips and stuff at the victim, who turns round and said something to the effect of, please desist. And the attacker walks over and punches him. Guy had a tooth knocked out and managed to get him done for a GBH. Well, you gotta give him credit for at least sticking to his story. I'm a nurse, and we had a man come in who said he'd swallowed a foreign object. The object was lodged in his rectum and was too large and irregularly shaped to have made it down his whole digestive tract without causing any damage before finally getting stuck in the largest portion. He stuck to his story. Okay. When I was doing my EMT clinicals, we had a geriatric patient with a high fever and all the signs that point to a UTI. Her family had let her be in a really terrible condition for about half a week due to sheer negligence. They said that she couldn't take her to a doctor for various reasons, but it was all bullshit. We couldn't take her to her primary care provider. What was, they first started spouting off, but under their insurance, they had access to an urgent care that was about a mile away. EMT in a medium-sized city here. Almost every time after an overdose, the person is given Narcan and becomes conscious again. In the presence of a police officer, they took nothing, never have done drugs, never seen any. Once you get them into the ambulance and ask again, suddenly they took all these drugs. My favorites when you ask, they say no, and you tell them naloxone only works on opioids, and they suddenly remember taking drugs. I'm here to help you, dude. Just tell me what you took so we can treat it properly. Not a cop, but I do compliance enforcement for environmental issues, which is sort of like giving a business a ticket. Roll up to a place for a routine, unannounced inspection. It was August, which is relevant. They're supposed to be continuously monitoring the pH in their emission control equipment, one reading every 15 minutes, so I asked for the records. They hand me the file, and I quickly noticed that January through April all have 0.00 in the box for every single reading, so I asked what happened. As it turns out, the guy who installed the pH meter left the storage cap on it, so it was recording nothing because there was nothing for it to measure. Shortly after installing the instrument, the guy retired and allegedly told no one that the cap was still on. No one thought to look into how it was possible that a pH of exactly 0 was even possible, let alone consistently for a period of months, until April when someone thought that maybe something was up and they should look into it. Further, they didn't find any need to notify me of this issue at all and only admitted it after I caught them out. My dad is a paramedic. He once had a call about a car that had went off the road. He comes up and the guy is sitting at the wheel pretty knocked up. He also had a needle sticking out of his arm as well. My dad asked him if he had been doing drugs tonight. Of course not. Why would you think that? I just fell asleep at the wheel. I'm fine. Well, when you gotta go, you gotta go. Luckily, no one was injured. Speeding 120 plus in a 45. Said he had to go shit and he wasn't shitting on himself or anyone. I arrested him in the convenience store restroom. He fought the ticket in court, but the laws were strict at the time, and 35 plus, I had a departmental policy, shall arrest, so my hands were tied. He brought in a doctor's sworn affidavit that he had colon surgery a year or so prior, and the judge let him off with a court cost and considered it a moving violation. He saw me on the way out and appreciated me for telling the truth. It was 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. There was zero traffic, and he didn't pose a danger to anyone. You gotta go. Non-emergency, but am a medical personnel in a clinic. I double as a medical technologist in the on-site lab and the phlebotomist in the nursing room. It's amazing how many unbearable pains are miraculously cured immediately after the doctor examines them and leaves the bedside. Must be the treatment plan of getting moved to the front of the queues. As a psychiatrist, I've met my fair share of malingers. None more so than Individual X, who was arrested in possession of copious amounts of CP hidden between the pages of overdue library books. All throughout my evaluation of him and his trial, he maintained he was an avid reader who had simply borrowed these books from numerous public libraries and noticed the CP inside, and that during his initial arrest, he was on his way to return the books and their contents. His story fell apart during the trial, and he was sentenced along with another male and 2 females. I work in law enforcement. The place I work had some lawn equipment go missing. I conduct interviews of the park personnel and no one gives it up. I check the local pawn shops and find our missing equipment. In my state, when you pawn something, you have to provide photo ID, which is recorded with the items you're pawning. Most pawn shops also have their transactions recorded via video surveillance. The equipment is pawned by one of the employees from the parks department. I call him and tell him I found the equipment and the record of the transaction with his ID. He proceeds to tell me that someone stole his ID and was going around town pawning stuff in his name. When I point out that, in the video, he's wearing the department shirt, he tells me they stole his shirt too. Needless to say, he's arrested. I wrote up the report and ended up framing and hanging it on my wall, part where I wrote what he told me. I was almost arrested for trying to steal cars, and really I was just trying to save a bunny's life. I was walking home one evening and saw a bunny sitting in the middle of the road. I ran over and shooed it off the road, then crossed the road again back to the side I was originally on. A couple minutes later, a cop car pulls up next to me with the directional light shining in my face. I'm blocking my eyes, and next thing I know, my face is slammed onto the hood of the cop car and my arm is being twisted behind my back. They're yelling at me, asking why I'm checking car doors. It took me a while to realize that when I was crossing the road to shoo the bunny, someone had seen and thought that I was going from car to car checking if the doors were unlocked. I had to try to explain to these 2 aggressive officers that I was just shooing a bunny out of the road. It was pretty humiliating considering a few people I knew happened to walk by and I looked like a criminal. They finally let me go after about 10 minutes and told me to walk straight home, even though I was like 22 at the time and it was 9 p.m. Not an officer, but I have the story firsthand. Having house party at my fraternity house that I'm head of for the night, Irish guy comes in with a huge bag of weed, hands to a random guy so he can use both hands to roll his joint, and turns back to him. Random books it out of the house with his bag. Irish then loses his shit when he finds his bag gone. We end up throwing him out because he's making a scene. Fast forward 30 minutes, get the cop knock at the door. I answer. Now, cool on the cop because we were obviously drinking and probably have minors, but he says, "Hey, we don't care about the party, but this guy says someone stole his wallet, so we need to investigate." It's Irish. His wallet, you say? I take cop aside and tell him his weed story. We walk back and cop asks Irish for ID. Irish pulls out his wallet and shows his ID. Cop and Irish leave. I laugh out loud. TL, DR. Guy has weed stolen and tells cops it was his wallet. Shows cops his wallet to get ID out of it. Not a doctor or other emergency person, but my wife tripped on a power cord in the kitchen and fell, hitting her arm on the edge of the granite countertop. Put one hell of a nasty bruise right above her elbow. She went to the doctor and told him what happened and that she thought she'd broken her elbow. He sends her off to the imaging clinic for an x-ray on the doctor's orders. The x-ray the lower part of her arm, not the elbow. Of course that part wasn't broken. Apparently he thought it was domestic violence because how the hell can someone trip and fall like that? So the x-ray was looking for a break from me grabbing her arm and twisting it. Dude, the other day she broke her foot for the 3rd time by dropping something on it. I promise, I'm not beating my wife. Her arm hurts every time the weather changes because it was never set properly. responded in our fire engine to downed power lines. The power pole was sheared off and had tire marks on it. The power lines were on top of a car. Next to the car, a guy frantically trying to change the tire. He said he got a flat and pulled over to change it. Then the power lines just happened to fall onto his car, which was weird because the front axle was mangled and the wheel had giant wood splinters in it. Not me, but during the heydays of the East Area rapist, a prowler was reported in the neighborhood. Police showed up to find a man wearing no pants in a backyard. The man claimed to have been searching for a lost car from like 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. The man lived like 10 minutes away, and if I recall correctly, I believe he also had a telephoto camera lens in his car, along with a hunting knife and images taken of a woman at a gas station. Cop here. It's very common after a hit and run where the driver flees on foot for a stolen vehicle call to come in a few minutes later. In one particular case, a guy actually hit a 2-year-old with his car before crashing into a building. The mother of the child, a complete stranger, lied about who the driver was before he tried to say his car was stolen a few minutes later. One of my first cases ever was a guy we witnessed crash into a pole. He got out, started to walk away until he saw us. He then jumped back into his car and took off. We're not allowed to chase anyone, so he got away, but crashed again down the street. By the time we caught up to it, he was gone, but he left everything, including his ID and his cell phone in the car. His girlfriend even called him while we were there, and she said she just left her house. Everything was dropped in court due to lack of evidence. What? Also, for thugs to have obvious self-inflicted gunshot wounds, but make up the same story about walking down the street minding their own business when they suddenly got shot. Have you ever been in a situation like this with a family member or friend? How did it go? I'll tell you a story about my friend who had a bullshit story hit him like a train. My friend has a half-sister. Half-sister is an absolute degenerate junkie, like a BDSM cam whore junkie. Her brain is like a train with no bolts, no brakes. One day, she gets into an argument with my friend while they're at home late at night. It gets pretty heated verbally. She gets a wicked grin on her face and starts slapping, scratching, and punching herself, laughing while she does it, teasing my friend by saying, "Why would you do this to me?" She then calls the cops in her best hysterical voice she can act. He just sits back and realizes he's effed and accepts his fate when the cops show up. Cops bust in and slap the cuffs on, take him to jail. Only person he knows that can help him is his mother, who knows how crazy her own daughter is. So my buddy asks for his phone call. "Yeah, right, asshole. I'm clocking out. See you in the morning." For 8+ hours, my friend sits in a cell, staring at nothing but steel. He couldn't sleep. Finally, he gets his phone call in the morning, and his mom tells the cops that her daughter is mental. He's let go. My buddy asked the cop if they're gonna do anything about his sister. They just burst out laughing in his face and tell him to have a nice day. He was 17.